to create a welcome environment for the interaction of our souls, our hearts, and our visions. We should learn from the technology revolution that we should all understand its role in our lives and see it as a final step in our search for unity throughout the universe. We should all come to accept that the driving force behind the entire universe is intangible and mighty. We should merit to experience the beyond and above. We can say wireless, godly knowledge in every single thing, beginning with ourselves. We should never forget our higher purpose. We should strive to enhance our scientific search for truth by constantly expanding our spiritual search for the divine. May God Almighty bless us all here with an abundance of success in all our endeavors. We should have, for the technology to work, we have to press the right buttons. We should all know the right buttons to press. And we should all merit to see live
Thank you, Rabbi Raskin. We're gathered here for the G5 for the sustainable use of the spectrum. Long overdue, because as you're all aware, this is a finite resource. Our electronic communication sector is growing rapidly, but this resource is also a very important tool for not only media, and you know my bias, broadcast media, but it is also extremely important in improving lives, improving the lives of our people, especially those not connected on the digital highway. It's important in areas of health, education, and in several other respects. So what we are about to do today is to help us to catch up. And in that regard, the Spectrum Management Authority has a very important role to play in leading that national effort. And as such, its chairman, the chairman of the board of the Spectrum Management Authority, is Edward Gabidon. He's also chairman of the board of directors of the Heart Trust NTA and the chief executive officer of Syncon Technologies Limited, an IT consultancy firm. In a career spanning the banking and communication services sector, Edward Gabidon has served in senior executive positions at Lime and what was RBTT. He styles himself as a proud graduate of the Kingston College. He holds professional designation in project management practices and principles from the University of New Orleans and an MBA from our own University of the West Indies. In addition to his strategic leadership of the Heart Trust NTA, Edward is currently the driving force, the leader of the team at the Spectrum Management Authority, and we invite him to formally welcome you this morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's always fascinating when you hear someone reading your bio. I was looking around, asking who is that person. That being said, I'll say to you good morning, and let's proceed. Honorable Minister Favour Williams, Minister of Science, Technology, Energy and Technology, the Minister Teradon, Minister of State, Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Minister Julian Robinson. Julia Robinson. Apologies. I haven't had my coffee yet. For those of you who know me, that coffee is very important to my life. Julian Robinson, Opposition Spokesman on Science and Technology. Dr. Maria Hamilton, Managing Director of Spectrum Authority. Ms. Carleen Salmon, Assistant Executive Director, Broadcasting Commission. Mr. Maurice Barnes, Chief Executive Officer, eGov Jamaica Limited. The Board of Directors of Spectrum, a hard-working board, a very knowledgeable and diverse board, and I am very proud to be part of that team. The heads and executives of all agencies, operators, invited guests, and members. And I'd like to also acknowledge Ms. Alison Filbert, CEO of Digicel, and Mr. Brian Carter, Senior Counsel of the FCC. Now that I've gone through the salutations, let me just say I'm very poor at speeches, so I'll just speak from the heart.
the complaints, and ensuring from a regulatory perspective from the OUR and the other entities, how do we ensure as we move forward into 5G that the quality of the network is actually
party. And one of the challenges we face to make the best use of the opportunities that are available and to come. And education, planning, policy making, and implementation are absolutely crucial in that regard. So it is very commendable that the State Minister of Education, Youth and Information is at the table, and they will be in the deliberations. Let me welcome the State Minister, Orlando Terrelong, to bring greetings. Minister.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having invited me here as we discuss the future of technology and the future of Jamaica. I got the invitation and I thought at first, Spectrum 5G is very interesting. And I thought, well, how do we prepare the next generation for the future if we do not have an educational component in the discussion? And so I thought it was very timely for us to have been invited also at the Ministry of Education, which also has portfolio responsibility for information as well. Now, when we speak of spectrum and we speak of the future, we have already known that we are living in the fourth industrial revolution. This is the age of technology, the age of artificial information, artificial intelligence, the age of science. How do we get our children ready for what is to come? How do we educate them for what is to come when in a few years they will be competing not necessarily with each other, but be competing with artificial intelligence? And so education has a key role to play in the discussion. But one must also look at the history. We cannot get to that G5 component or that 5G component without first completing our digital switchover. The discussions for digital switchover started more than a decade ago, but where are we now? Is it that companies have determined amongst themselves that, well, digital switchover is the way to go, but how do we get to deliver that service to consumers? How do we compete in a market space that has already seen traditional media shrinking? Certainly, over the last years, we have seen internet companies such as Amazon, Facebook, Google. We have seen tremendous growth in those industries, while traditional media has been diminishing. My notation indicates here that the world is now experiencing the fourth industrial revolution, also known as Industry 4.0, which presents some social and economic opportunities as well as challenges globally and for the government of Jamaica. This revolution, ladies and gentlemen, is like no other, as it involves the integration of advances in artificial intelligence, robotics, nanotechnology, additive manufacturing, genetic engineering, and biotechnology. Some 839,000 users were noted in 2005, and that number fell to 482,000 in 2016. The two main free-to-air media companies, CVM and TVJ, have also reported declines in revenues in the same time period. Other subscribers, such as Flow and Digicel, have also noted that they have seen a drop in revenues as well. The situation, however, could still turn around. However, the long-awaited switchover to digital television and the rollout of 5G networks in Jamaica could give the media companies the opportunity to surge back and take their place in the marketplace. Certainly, it would allow them to compete on a more level playing ground. The rapid uptake of DVB, DT2 in Europe, and ATS 3.0 in Korea, and soon in the United States of America, by over-the-air broadcasters suggests that they see this as a great opportunity to offer more channels at a higher quality and lower cost. If traditional providers were to switch to more internet-based distribution, they will at last be able to compete directly with online service competitors. This, of course, is important. Even more important when one considers that to the digital age. Oftentimes, many of our local producers, they indicate that well, this is the age of creativity. We have so many creatives right here in Jamaica. However, we do not get the opportunity to put our content on television. Television providers will also speak about, well, the costs, because their companies operating within a particular frame to make budget increase their revenues. What then is the solution? So the government gets even more involved in this. Even when we consider the discussion of digital switchover, there are persons within the broadcasting fraternity who will say, well, what is government in Jamaica are exposed to a range of serious online dangers. This also brings to the fore questions of how unregulated are internet providers. How is it that content, for example, persons will film an accident on the road, and before you know it, that content is uploaded to Broadcasting Commission or local providers say this content is somehow disturbing, that content comes down immediately. Those are some of the concerns that we will have to face. When you think of the power of the internet, just over the last 2 days, and I'll share this with you, some of you may have seen it. I suspect most people in the room would have seen it because it became quite a social media phenomenon. But this is the power of digital media. This is the power of internet service providers and social media. Over the last 2 days, there was this attempt of stealing Rihanna's nationality by the Jamaicans. And the Jamaicans, they launched a hashtag saying Rihanna is Jamaican. It went viral. Persons as far as the BBC reported on it. Paper Magazine also did an article on it. Loop in Barbados, Loop Jamaica, they also did articles on it. And it started with just one person saying, well, the Jamaican dollar is trash. And someone else said, oh really? Every time there's an issue with Jamaica, you want to speak about our currency. Well, tell you what if all Jamaicans decided we're going to claim Rihanna, since Rihanna is the only thing that that Barbados is known for? And the hashtag started, Rihanna is Jamaica. Before you know it, it has gone viral. The Nigerians got involved, the rest of the world got involved, and I mean, I got involved too. But I got involved to prove a point. So I pretty much indicated. Yesterday was also World Mental Health Day, and one of the Rihanna has a song called, okay, good, a light moment, I'm happy for this. Rihanna has a song called Disturbia. And the song speaks about it's like a thief in the night. It comes up, it grabs you. And the truth is that we don't pay much attention to mental health. And even when you try to have the discussion, most persons, they don't want to talk about it because it's not fashionable, it's not sexy. But people talk about something that is funny. But so the point was, one of our graphic designers are completely talented, and what he did was he changed the picture of Nanny of the Maroons, and he did the wrap head, how she wrapped her head, and they photoshopped Rihanna's face on it. But I mean, the $500 bill, it looked impeccable. It looked impeccable. So my message simply was, Jamaican mega superstar Rihanna says to the rest of the world as we celebrate World Health Day, don't take everything so seriously, learn to relax, chill, and have some fun. Internet providers is such that they have a far reach. They can get into every single home within a second. They can start trends. They can determine what is happening. They can spread information even if it is fake information. So the whole concept of the speed, the accuracy, accuracy of the information, who is transmitting it, who is vetting it, what are they saying, and how quickly can they inform public opinion are some of the concerns that we will have to grapple with as we look at the future of telecommunications, the future of digital switchover, the future of 5G, simply because traditional media, as is in its analog state, cannot compete with that kind of technology, cannot compete with that kind of speed. So if we are to complete our discussions around analog, changing from analog to digital, then certainly it would help our local producers, our local, broadcasting providers to get into homes quicker. It will give them more bandwidth to play with, better quality, and also lower cost. And so it is within the interest of all of us here. Certainly the discussions will be had with the key stakeholders and government as it relates to how do we now regulate, or do we regulate? Do we tax? Do we not tax? What kind of policy framework do we want to put in? And certainly those are some of the discussions I wish to hear as we continue this symposium. And finally, just to indicate that the way forward, therefore, is to reshape the legislative framework for media and content regulation to fit the 21st century and beyond. We will certainly have to expand the media literacy and digital awareness programs, working through schools and educational organizations to engage students and adults, especially parents, on the critical media and information issues of the day, as such as cyberbullying, revenge porn, internet addiction, and other problematic internet use issues. We need to take a proactive approach to build the capacity of youth, parents and guardians and teachers to detect and report risks, to sensitize people as to the signs of radicalization among some of our youth, because one problem that will also present is the use of the internet, the use of social media to recruit or otherwise to import deviant behaviors. We also must ensure that our children and adults are able to utilize the power of increased connectivity. It's not just for social media and social life, but this increased access can create significant wealth for our country and our people. It will certainly allow our creatives to find greater avenues to export their talents, to exploit them, and also to make a living. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a great future for our country. To this end, we must work collaboratively within the spirit of participation and within the spirit of partnership to achieve a future that is ready for the age of technology, and one that sees our younger generation having not just increased access, but also the ability to earn a living. Let us not waver, therefore, on our determination to move from analog to digital technology. Let us hasten our steps to ensure that the digital switchover to enable the age of 5G happens, and it happens within a short time. Thank you so much.
We're now going to hear from the minister with the ultimate policy-making decision. Yes, she has to make the decision, having done the consultations and the collaborations. She will have to make the case to the cabinet as to where we go. Minister Favor Williams. They say the best man for the job is a woman.
Of ceremonies. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me by acknowledging first Rabbi Raskin, who prayed for us this morning and reminded us that we should never forget our higher calling. Let me recognize as well the Honorable Orlando Terrelong, State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Mr. Julian Robinson, Opposition Spokesperson on Science and Technology, Chairman of the Spectrum Management Authority, Mr. Edward Gabidon, our Managing Director, who's put on this very first G5 Symposium, Dr. Maria Myers Hamilton. I see in the house here this morning the chairman of eGov Jamaica Limited, and I think the chief executive officer is here as well, Mr. Maurice Barnes. Let me acknowledge Ms. Carleen Salmon, Assistant Executive Director, Broadcasting Commission. Ms. Alison Filbert, CEO of Digicel, I want to say welcome. Mr. Chris Daring, co-CEO of Ready TV, and the person who took me 4,000 feet above sea level to Mullet Hall in Portland to demo the community satellite network. Thank you for stepping out and being bold. Board members, directors, what did I say? Okay. All right, wonderful. Let me acknowledge all the board members, directors, and management of the Spectrum Management Authority. Our guests from overseas, in particular, Mr. Brian Carter, Senior Counsel of the FCC, Mr. Nigel Cashmere from CTU, is the telecom specialist at CTU. Let me recognize as well CEOs, heads and executives of our respective agencies, operators, specially invited guests, members of the media. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to Spectrum Management's inaugural G5 Symposium. The Spectrum Management Authority is one of the public bodies under the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Technology. It is indeed a pleasure to join the Spectrum Management Authority as you stage your G5 Symposium as part of the Corporate Strategic Retreat. I also bring greetings on behalf of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, who is unable to be here today. As Minister with responsibility for the technology portfolio, I am pleased with the work that the SMA has done. And I'm truly heartened that you have seen the need to focus as part of the symposium on the sustainable use of spectrum. Indeed, the SMA's recent achievements underscore the importance of having an agile, technologically savvy, and socially conscious regulator. The development and commissioning of a web payment system for 4 classes of licenses, namely amateur radio license, citizens band radio service, duplicate of existing spectrum license, and type approval certification, mean that clients are now able to interface with the SMA without leaving the confines of their businesses. The infrastructural improvements and capacity building efforts which have been undertaken, including the acquisition of new monitoring equipment, have served to strengthen the authority's monitoring capabilities and technical expertise to manage the spectrum efficiently, while allowing it to respond in a more timely manner to complaints of interference. The tripartite agreement with the Postmaster General and the Jamaica Amateur Radio Association to revise the examination process for amateur radio operators, along with the amendments made to the Radio and Telegraph Control Act, Radio Operators and Technicians Regulation in 2017, has paved the way for the increase in amateur radio operators and thus greater access to ham radio technology in times of disaster. With these and other developments, it is clear that the work of the SMA is vital to the country's technological advances. It would be hard to overstate the importance of the radio spectrum in economies. Most major industries rely on wireless technologies that depend on spectrum access. Mass media is distributed via cellular, broadcast, and satellite networks. Public safety and national security require mobile communication and mobile video. Patients and hospitals rely on wireless medical devices. Driverless cars, smart homes, drones, smart grocery labels, telemedicine, and smart cities will require gobs, very large amount of spectrum, and will add to the growing millions of workers directly employed in telecommunications fields in countries across the world and here in Jamaica as well. For economists who study this area, there's a clear consensus about the importance of allocating spectrum rights well. The general key for countries to get spectrum rights, quickly and completely into the marketplace. And those words came from a senior research fellow at the George Mason University, and they are very appropriate to our day right here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we're living in an age where connectivity is an absolute necessity for business, trade, and daily communication. The ever-changing mix and growth of wireless devices that are accessing mobile networks worldwide is one of the primary contributors to global mobile traffic growth. Cisco's global mobile data traffic forecast update for 2017 to 22 outlines that globally, in 2 years, mobile devices and connections will grow to some 12.3 billion. A 5G connection will generate 2.6 times more traffic than the average 4G connection. There will be 8.4 billion handheld or personal mobile-ready devices and 3.9 billion machine-to-machine connections, whether they be GPS systems in cars, asset tracking systems in the shipping and manufacturing sectors, or medical applications which make patient records and health status more readily available. The growth in data-hungry technologies will increase the demand for spectrum, which makes efficient planning for the use of this finite resource even more critical. An example of the increase in demand is expected to come via the Internet of Things. And as you are well aware in this room, that simply means everything will be connected to the Internet. Let me tell you in the words of an ICT writer for Forbes magazine dated March 2013, 6 years ago, he said, probably the most pervasive trend is the web of things. That was how they used to call it 6 years ago, where just about everything we interact with becomes a computable entity. Our homes, our cars, and even objects on the street will interact with our smartphones and with each other seamlessly. He noted in 2013 that the Web of Things, or as we say today, the Internet of Things, was already underway. and that once it becomes a natural, normal way of interacting with our environment, there's really no telling what the impact will be. And that's just one example. It is predicted that mobile data traffic will skyrocket in coming years as consumers' appetite for high-quality video streaming continues to grow. The long-awaited move to 5G is a hot topic in the telecommunications world, and for good reason. 5G is the next generation of wireless technology which will deliver, we believe, super-fast connections for smartphones and higher capacity for broadband networks. It is estimated that 5G will be 100 times faster than current 4G networks. It is clear that sweeping technological advancements are creating waves of change in today's regulatory environment, posing significant challenges for regulators who strive to maintain a balance between fostering innovation, protecting consumers, and addressing the potential unintended consequences of disruption. We are cognizant that an effectively managed and utilized spectrum opens up a world of opportunities for all to take advantage of next generation broadband technologies, including 5G. There is therefore a call for governments and operators all over the world to do more to alleviate issues of availability, allocation, and harmonization of the spectrum that constrain the ability of various participants in the mobile ecosystem to invest in infrastructure and deliver services. So in light of all of this, what are my expectations of the authority? I expect that the authority will be an even more efficient entity in regulating and managing the spectrum as a scarce but valuable natural resource. I expect that the authority will ensure that its recommendations regarding pricing of the spectrum equally balances the objectives to ensure equity in pricing while encouraging deployment of services in unserved and underserved areas as a means of achieving the goal of ubiquitous access to telecommunication services. Ladies and gentlemen, as wireless technologies gain ground due to low cost and ease of use, it is beyond doubt that wireless is the future. Consequently, the SMA must continue to position itself to facilitate a technology-enabled society. This G5 Symposium, with its focus on reforming the SMA's processes, closing the digital divide, protecting consumers, and public safety, is one example of this. We are on a mission to transform Jamaica into a digital and knowledge-based society, and the SMA is a vital part of that transition. I wish you all the best for this symposium and your strategic retreat, which follows, and I want to encourage you to continue on the path of shaping our future with wireless. I look forward to the results of your deliberations and the actions that will follow. Thank you and good day.
Thank you, Minister Williams. And we're going to move right along. One of our regional partners in the business of spectrum management over the years and regulations is the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the CTU. And they are here today, and we're going to be hear from one of their specialists, Nigel Casimir, on the of the CTU. Nigel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Honorable Ministers, Minister Fever Williams, Orlando Terrelong, Chairman Gabidon, and MD Hamilton. Thank you very much for inviting us. Also acknowledge the other senior officials from government agencies here in Jamaica and from the Jamaican ICT stakeholder community. Thank you very much for having me. As I sat there listening to the speakers before me, I realized that all of the issues that you are grappling with are issues that have been addressed and are being addressed in various fora of the CTU. We're going to hear a lot more about the spectrum matters, and even I gather from the agenda as well things related to broadcasting. But Minister Terrelong talked about the social media issues and how do we manage the flow of information and the flood of disinformation that's also on social media. Is there a need for regulation and that sort of thing, and would regulation be effective? So all these issues are things that are discussed and the proposals developed and so on in various events and fora of the CTU, and in particular related to social media and sort of related to that, it's certainly related to governance of the internet. There is also data protection matters. These are matters that were the subject of, or have been the subject of our agenda of the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum for the past 2 years. And they are still topical because they are not yet under control, as it were. So the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum is an event that well, it's not just an event, but it comes together once a year, and we do not yet have a venue for next year, and we would very much like to bring the CIGF, as we call it, to Jamaica. We've had 15 so far. We've had participation by Jamaicans and Jamaican entities, but we've never had one in Jamaica. And certainly throughout the Caribbean, we are grappling with all these issues, and we certainly like to bring it to Jamaica, so I'll just throw that out there. So I've started talking a bit about what the CTU is involved with, and actually I did have some pictures to show, and hopefully from what I'll go through. Oh, thank you. Very nice. Yes, and from what I'll go through, you'll get a sense of the importance and some of the future activities of the CTU. I'm Nigel Casimir, and I'm representing our Secretary General, who is Ms. Bernadette Lewis. And I'm quite happy to be here. I think I got picked for this particular assignment because the topic is mainly spectrum management, which I'm leading the CTU work in that regard. So I bring greetings from Ms. Lewis from Secretary General Lewis, in fact, to this gathering. And I think MD Hamilton, she had a look at the agenda as well and was quite pleased to see input from bipartisan input, shall I say. And I think that is a good example that we in the CTU have seen in only one other Caribbean territory in our work that we think is advised for taking the country forward. It would sort of insulate the progress from changes in political administrations if we all moving forward with the same vision. So the CTU, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, this year we celebrated 30 years. And I should go back to my first slide and show our eagle taking off after, building up our expertise and so on for 30 years. And we striving to move onward. it's a treaty organization, so that means that the heads of government got together and decided to put this organization together at a time when it was clear what the impact of technology would have been to all the economies of the world. At a time when convergence was happening in the telecommunications industry, convergence meaning movement from individual special purpose networks to common multi-purpose networks. And it was noted that, our just telecommunications. This also includes data processing and information technology more broadly. So the mandate of the CTU was expanded to address information and communications technologies, both telecommunications and IT. In addition, as well, it was noted that all the relevant information wasn't resident just in the governments of the region, and those were the members of the CTU at the time. So the membership of the CTU then was open to industry stakeholders, non-governmental entities, and even beyond the initial CARICOM nation core, to include non-CARICOM nations around the Caribbean. Because in the work, you will realize that next door to Dominica, you have, you have Guadeloupe on the north and Martinique in the south. So with spectrum management and use of wireless frequencies, you have to handle relations, cross-border relations, Guyana, Suriname, Belize and its neighbors. Jamaica is a little bit insulated by water, but you still have Cuba, Cayman, and so on neighboring. So the need was there to open the work of the CTU to more than just that small core. And the vision that we currently have is to have ICT-enabled development in a seamless Caribbean. A statement there of our mission. We bring stakeholders together. We work in partnership, and strategic partnerships is a key to how we work, because we all individually resource limited. So we all have to get together and work with other member governments, other stakeholders in the industry. This is the CTU. This is the CTU, the community of Caribbean nations, and it's actually 20 of them, and you will see independent nations, the British Overseas Territories as well. It includes Cuba, and we have St. Martin, and we do have functional relationships with the Dutch Caribbean and the French Caribbean. We don't have any French Caribbean nations in the CTU, but we actually have a French Caribbean operator, who is one of our non-state members down at the bottom there. So apart from the 20 member countries, we have a dozen or so non-state members, which include operating companies, regional regulatory authorities, the International Amateur Radio Union, and some, what shall I say, international operating companies like satellite companies and so on. So that community of countries and industry stakeholders working together is what really constitutes the CTU. Putting our heads together, putting our resources together, basically to advance communications and the development of the Caribbean. This is the structure of the CTU, right? And I'm making a distinction because sometimes people talk about the CTU and they think about the secretariat based in Port of Spain. That's not right. The secretariat is an enabler of the work of the CTU. So the way it is structured is that the member countries are represented by their ministers with responsible for ICT. And that's what we call our General Conference of Ministers. That meets annually, usually in the third week of September, somewhere in one of the member states. This year, it was about 3 weeks ago in Suriname. The General Conference of Ministers directs the work of the Executive Council. And the Executive Council is the members are the senior officials of the member states of the CTU. Senior officials meaning like the permanent secretaries of the relevant ministries or directors of telecommunications as the case might be. And that Executive Council supervises the work of the Secretariat. The Secretariat is the executing arm of the work of the CTU. So we would organize the Executive Council meetings, the General Conference of Ministers and so on, and basically implement the plans and so on that come out of those meetings. We work in, I guess, 5 main areas: ICT policy formulation and advice, regional project coordination, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the ones that we've recently done. Capacity development is a part of our work. We represent the Caribbean at international fora, and we mentioned the International Telecommunication Union and the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission in particular. And we also serve an industry watch function. So when we perceive technological developments that could have positive or negative impact on the economies, on the industries in the Caribbean, we would raise the alarm or pursue educational sort of initiatives in order that our members might be able to properly deal with oncoming events. Just a little more, just a few examples of some of the things that we've done in those areas. Under ICT policy formulation, excuse me, under ICT policy for formulation and advice, we work in spectrum management, and I'll be talking a little bit more later today on some of the things. Internet governance, which is what I mentioned about the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, and that forum has actually created a document which we call the Caribbean Internet Governance Policy Framework. It identifies a vision for Caribbean Internet governance, and it identifies policy areas that are of highest priority for our Caribbean region. And that document was really developed through the work of the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum over the years. We've done policy formulation in cybersecurity in particular, and there is also a regional framework that we develop in concert with the OAS and the Commonwealth Secretariat. And we do consultancies from time to time. Some of our individual countries might need assistance developing, for example, a national ICT plan in particular, or a government network design, things like that, that we can do in-house or through our network of experts that we've developed over the years. We do regional project coordination, and we've done things like a most recent one is one called CARSIP, which was the Caribbean Regional Infrastructure Development Program. And we had three countries associated with that. That was Grenada, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And CARSIP developed government-wide area networks and undersea cable facilities for those 3 countries. And the power of them working together and the coordination, it was such that they achieved, in terms of the prices that were quoted to them for equipment, they achieved a discounted rate of 41%. So imagine if we could get wider participation of Caribbean territories in common projects. what the possibilities are for cost efficiencies. We've also recently coordinated a harmonized Caribbean spectrum management project. Probably talk a little bit more about that as well later today. I will indeed. And that led to some specific approaches that were decided among our Caribbean territories. In fact, and it has been recorded in our Caribbean Spectrum Management Strategic Plan, which we are implementing, part of which related to preparing the region for world radio conferences and so on. So, in capacity building, we've done basic training programs, for example, but a lot of our work has been in the public awareness aspect of things with the Caribbean ICT Roadshow, which we've done 24 roadshows in 19 countries. And I think we have done a roadshow in Jamaica. Ministerial ICT seminars are quite important because we have changes, personnel changes in the various countries of the Caribbean, whether it's elections or different cabinet changes and so on. And the ministers who are the ones with the responsibilities for making the decisions, we found that there is an ongoing need to run like educational seminars to keep them up to speed with what's happening. We do regulatory forums as well, not necessarily on a fixed schedule, but more particularly as items arise. And the most successful one we've had actually was about 4 years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, when there was that merger taking place between Cable and Wireless and Columbus Communications, which had significant impact on the regulatory environment in many of the countries of the Caribbean. And we got the regulators together in terms of how they could possibly deal effectively with that. And Industry Watch Function, we've done a few things in that regard as well. Representing at international fora, I've listed some of them there. I've already mentioned like the ITU and CITEL, but on the internet side of things, we also do in the internet governance space, there are a host of internet organizations, ICANN and ARIN and well, the alphabet soup is up there. And in the internet space in particular, you learn a new language of acronyms. So I can say I speak 2 languages now, English and acronyms. So CTU projects. This gives you an example of the scope of work that the CTU handles. So I've mentioned the Caribbean Internet Governance Forum that started in 2005 and has been held every year since then. And we like to say, and I think truthfully, that we had the first regional Internet Governance Forum in the world because it was held in advance of the World Summit on the Information Society closing session in Tunis in 2005. And it was after that WSIS or WSIS forum that the rest of the world started having Internet Governance Forum. So I think we have that singular distinction in the Caribbean. And I also think that the products of our work in the Caribbean are also singular in the world because typically the forums around the world will come together and they talk, but you don't see much happening thereafter. We have tangible products, right? And I dare say that the rest of the world now is looking to get tangible products out of their own Internet Governance Forum. We do the Caribbean Center of Excellence. That is where we do some of our capacity building work and the consultancies that I mentioned. Harmonized spectrum management, and I'd also like to highlight our work in ICT for persons with disabilities, particularly because I'm here in Jamaica, and here is where we had our first event related to ICT for persons with disabilities, right here in Montego Bay up at the Convention Center. The attendance was overwhelming. You know, it indicated that there is a definite need for us to focus on this area. And over the years, we've been developing the sort of relationships and exposures for persons with disabilities in the different member countries to which we go, whether we go for statutory meetings or in a governance forum or whatever. We typically try to include a session related to that, and we've been dealing more particularly with the blind and deaf communities, and we are launching a pilot program for a service we are calling CFAS, which is Caribbean Video Assistance Service, which would use smartphones to offer services to deaf and blind persons in the community. So hopefully we'll get out, and actually Digicel is a partner with us in that. The pilot would be in Trinidad, but I think it would very quickly then roll out to Jamaica and one other country. Bahamas, I think, yes, correct. Thank you. So I mentioned CARSIP already. Caribbean Single ICT Space. The CTU also heads what we call the CARICOM ICT cluster of agencies, CTU, CBU, CARICOM Impacts, the CARICOM Secretariat, and CARICAD, that's the agency that deals with government automation and e-government and so on, to develop the vision and roadmap for the single ICT space. So that is something that was approved by the heads of government in CARICOM in 2017, and we are working to try to implement that by 2022. And our latest thrust has been 21st century government, which is what we perceive as being citizen-centric, seamless government. Citizen-centric, seamless government, and it is digitally enabled. And we've been, over the years, pushing for things like e-government and so on, and having exhibitions, demonstrations, and so on. But this year, for our 30th anniversary, we came up with a new concept, which we are calling Caribbean Futurescape. And Futurescape is creating an immersive environment of what life would be like in the technologically advanced future. So, for example, we set up a space with different areas which might represent different countries, and you have a unified ID card that gets you from country to country and gets you to access certain services. You can buy land, you could apply for a birth certificate, you could update your driver's license or whatever, and you actually it actually seeks to take you through these things such that you experience it rather than people tell you about it, right? And the intent really is to convince our high-level officials that yes, we need to move forward more quickly with the digitalization of our world, our environments here in the Caribbean in order to make progress. So this is just indication of the slew of projects. I talked about the CVAS project, the Harmonized Caribbean one, ICT policy development. The point is that CTU, this is our vision for ourselves. The primary facilitator of the formulation of Caribbean ICT policies, the preferred source of ICT advice for regional governments, leading coordinator for regional ICT projects, a major contributor to the development of ICT capacity, and designated advocate for ICT positions in international media. So this is basically where we see the role and importance of the CTU. Remember, the CTU is our community, right? The Secretariat is the group that executes the policies, but the power of the CTU is in our community working together for our common benefit. We share resources, and hopefully we will derive all the various benefits. For 2020, our focuses would be on 21st century government, the single ICT space, and spectrum harmonization work post-WRC, which is taking place, well, from the end of this month, actually. I think the 28th of October to about the third week of November in Egypt. That's the World Radio Communication Conference, in which changes are discussed and proposed to the radio regulations, the international treaty that governs all wireless communications. So after that, that will have impact on our spectrum management going forward, and we'll handle that during the course of next year. So thank you very much. I hope it was edifying and inspiring, and we look forward at the CTU to having greater and greater participation from all our members for our common benefit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nigel. And I know you're waning a little bit, so we're going to take the coffee break now so you can get your fix, yes, and we will resume in 15 minutes, okay? So, to the back for the coffee break, and we resume in 15 minutes.
DJ. disasters. My baby has been around for me. Kingdoms are falling, angels be calling.